Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the second part of the day of the conference, ASDAL Europe Conference, the fifth edition that take place these days in at Adventus University in Cernica. We are privileged to participate to another lecture delivered for us by Professor Dr. Mario Hibert from Sarajevo, University of Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. His first lecture was interesting and was awakening. So we don't know if what we do now is the right thing or not, because we use internet. And we hope that he will give us some hope now in order to have more courage to use modern devices. Thank you very much, Professor Mario.
Thank you, Josip. Thank you all for being back this hot summer day. Yeah, we're gonna continue this long session, this long presentation about so what I would like to actually explain a bit further. I'm not somebody who asks for denial of technology as such. First thing, technology is, let's say, we perceive it as a neutral because every technology could be used in a bad or a good way. It's a tool. So, I don't know, take, for example, an axe. You can use the axe to kill somebody or to save somebody's life. So, but I'm more eager to talk about the developments, the stages of evolution of technology, especially digital technology, and somehow to contextualize it and perceive it as a continuity, not as a discontinuity, because new media is often explained as a disruption, as a point of a new era. Yeah. But I would like us to think about it as a continuity of the, let's say, industrial age, but in a new form. So I was mentioning it yesterday when we discussed different things together about the project of my colleague and friend, Professor Vladan Joler from Novi Sad, from Serbia. And he was recently finished one of his projects called Calculating Empires. And he traced back with his colleague, American scholar Kate Crawford, the history, the evolution of technology as tools of classification and control, and actually as a tools of I would say never-ending colonialism. So to somehow recontextualize in into this slide that we stopped our morning discussions, I'm trying to somehow describe the period from the Second World War, let's say, the mid of 20th century until now, in order to focus especially on the internet and how the internet has also changed from the perspective of being an open protocol for not just consuming information, but producing and distributing content. So for the first time in history, let's be honest, we invented a tool that enabled us not just to passively consume information, but proactively to generate information. But what seemed as a path to democratization, it ended up as a tool of digital colonialization, let's say. And why I'm saying it? Because in 2005, 2006, which could be named as a birth of social media, we, in 20 years, we somehow ended up being hooked on social media, hooked on platforms. And we use the idea of internet in a way that it's now being platformized. It means it's being owned by the machines and the owners of machines whose platforms are actually having the circulation of information and communication of a totality of our lives. So most of us are using some of those tools. For example, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. So the mainstream form of use of the internet goes through the platforms. And there is a famous phrase in economy: when you get something for free, you are a product. So so I wanted to not frighten you, but to warn you about those processes that are called Californian ideology. And yeah, and it's not something that I invented. It was taken from the very famous essay from 1995 of Richard Barbrook and Andy Cameron, who explained actually what they mean by the Californian ideology. And now we can see that 30 years later, it was such a prophetic essay, because at that time, a few people would understand the processes that they have been tracing back to the history of political economy of technology. And so the Californian ideologues assert that social and political debates about the future have now become meaningless, because we have tools of emancipation, tools of democratization, tools that gave us opportunity to everybody to have a voice. But having a voice doesn't mean that we will end up in more democratic societies as we see now. So those tools are actually now exposed as the tools that disrupts democracy. And we could say that tech ruling class is actually invented or created platforms as they have been creating any other application or gadget, and they call it disruptive tools. How to put it? I forgot it now, but it came to me eventually. So I'm going to continue talking about the belief system of the ruling tech class that are stick to its confidence that big data is going to save the world, save the politics, as they have been using, for example, this very famous figure in popular culture like Bono Vox, who somehow is a musician who speaks about peace and etc. So, of course, big data is not going to save the politics. We see how the politics looks like today, and I'm going to continue explaining these new epistemic regimes and infrastructures. Big data fetishism could be seen also as a constitution of the new authority. And as Jose van Dijk mentioned 10 years ago, she named it the process of datafication, seen as legitimate means to access, understand, and monitor people's behavior. And that's what's actually happening on platforms, on social media. We are constantly monitored. We are constantly surveilled. We are constantly under the watched, scrutinized, and it resembles to Orwell's famous novel 1984. So there is a big brother who's actually monitors our behavior. But the thing is that we voluntarily participate in that process. It's not something that we refuse. It's not something that we want to overthrow. It's not something that we know how to reject. We somehow enjoy being attached to those platforms, which are designed to be addictive. And there are so many researchers by now who explain the dopamine effect of using the social media, etc., etc. So we can shift from the Orwellian system of control to Aldous Huxley, the British, also famous writer, who was writing the Brave New World, in which he explains that the people will conquer themselves voluntarily, and it's actually what's going on. The joy is administered and designed through the structural design of those platforms. And Jose van Dijk explains how the characteristics of the datafication now holds the characteristics of widespread secular belief. And let me explain a bit how it goes in waves. So everything somehow today becomes smart. We are surrounded by the smartness, by the smart devices, smart technology. So in the 90s, we had the Web 1.0, and it goes like, you should check your email. You should check your email. Web 2.0 technologies 20 years ago were administrating the notification of you should check your social account, social media. And finally, we got the Web 3.0 technologies, Internet of Things, smart devices. So it goes like you should check your smart watch, glass, lamp, socks, refrigerator, whatever. Everything becomes smart. So what does it mean, actually? It means that every device comes with the sensors that are constantly gathering the information. And those devices we all have around us are black boxes. Black boxes. And it's not something that is discovered quite recently. It actually goes back to the cybernetics. So late 60s, beginning of 70s, cybernetic and Norbert Wiener, who actually explained in his book called explained the transmission of information in complex environments. And he named it's a human, it's a machine, and society. So he explained us the concept of black boxes. The black box is every device, every system who has input and output. So if we know all about the inputs, we can anticipate and control the outputs. So who controls the black box? I mentioned already, tech giants, corporative platforms. And we don't know the processes inside the black boxes because we can't trace them, because we don't own the algorithms that they use for processing inputs and organizing outputs. So the cybernetic theory explained us how the feedback functions. So this is not new. This is only the manifestation of the concepts and ideas that through the sophistication of technologies happen to be our everyday lives now. And that's why I'm so, let's say, passionate about trying to explain that this is not new, this is not discontinuity. Because those activity trackers, sensors, could process algorithmically such a huge amount of data, of course metadata along with it, that we just can't imagine. And our biological presence using information and is constantly colliding with an immense, vast space of information. That's why we are constantly in a hurry. Because we can't grasp with our biological time such a vast content of information. And it's called fear of missing out. Yeah, that we're gonna miss some information if we are not constantly glued to the screens. So that's how those devices intentionally are designed to be addictive and glue us to the endless real-time collecting and checking of data about our digital lives, our digital traces that we are putting into these black boxes. So I was kind of joking about this, and to reconnect it to the beginnings of the internet. We were promised the windows, but we ended up with the mirrors. And there is a famous also serial called Black Mirrors about dystopia of these present times. There is also a very important and well-received documentary called The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma, which explains how those infrastructures are designed in a way to hook us to the screens. So we are the data, because we are witnessing the datafication of everything, the quantification of everything, the measurement of everything. Whatever we do on platforms is constantly traced, monitored, quantified, and algorithmically taken back to us by the feedback loops. So what we project to the screens, the screen echoes back to us. And that's how we end up in a filter bubbles, echo chambers on social media, because what we watch, what we like, what we share is algorithmically creating the bubble around our digital behavior, our online behavior, and gives us back the content that we will approve. And as you already probably realized, I like to read immense literature that somehow reminds us that we knew these things even decades ago. One of the scholar and prominent computer scientist, child math prodigy, how they labeled him, turned humanities professor, then predicted pitfalls of technology and dark side of the internet 30 years ago. Philip Agre predicted what he called the data industrial complex as a way by which the mass collection of data would change and simplify human behavior to make it easier to be quantified. In 2001, he wrote, "Your face is not a barcode," arguing against the use of facial recognition in public spaces. In the article, he predicted that if the technology continued to develop in the West, it would eventually be adopted elsewhere. Of course it was. Allowing, for instance, the Chinese government to track everyone inside the country within the 20 years. We know that China uses it as a social crediting system. Yeah. But why can't we believe and accept that the West uses it in the same way, but in a more sophisticated way, that we want to participate in it, that we are not objecting. They give us freedom to be conquered, let's say.
The impression that we profit, we have
Yeah.
advantages of that.
So why do we neglect and forget people who had such an insightful understanding of some field? And now I come to the real dark points. And it's called dark enlightenment, neo-reactionary movement. And maybe you will be interested in it because it explains the Trumpism that I mentioned earlier this morning. Behind not the official politics of White House and President Trump comes this figure, Curtis Yarvin, the blogger formerly known as Mencius Moldbug, self-fashioned political theorist, founder of anti-democratic and pro-authoritarian movement called the Dark Enlightenment. For Curtis Yarvin, democracy is outmoded conceit or failed experiment. And he stands for the dictatorship and the monarchy as a more efficient way of ruling than democracy. Saying that state should be replaced with the techno-financial powers, platforms of tech government, or technocratic monarchy. So no wonder when the President Trump was inaugurated, who stand near him? Elon Musk, Bezos, as you see how it Zuckerberg. So this new ruling class. And how does dismantling of the democracy occur? By overloading media with, pardon my French, bullshit. And that's exactly what we witness today. What you find on TikTok, a lot of wisdom. And see his quote here, maybe from 20 years ago. In many ways, nonsense is a more effective organizing tool than the truth. Anyone can believe in truth. To believe in nonsense is an unforgeable demonstration of loyalty. It serves as a political uniform. And if you have a uniform, you have an army. So, what Curtis Yarvin is also saying, and you can easily Google it, so just to check if that I'm not bullshitting you. Pardon my French again. At the core of this idea of dismissal of all powerful intellectual institutions at the center of modern society, just as the church was intellectual institution at the center of medieval society. The arrival of printing press broke the literate elite's monopoly on information and subverted the Catholic Church dominance. The arrival of digital media, he says, broke the monopoly of the cathedral with a small c, which he names journalism plus academia. So, you see, it's happening in the US at this moment. And Curtis Yarvin says the cathedral should be dismissed because it operates on a discourse. And then, quotes again, the Tsar, whose public mind is a canon, not a discourse, gets almost exactly the same results as the cathedral, but by the exact opposite methods. The Tsar punishes devotion from canonical thought. The cathedral rewards conformity with the dominant thought. So, in order to change the politics, how the politics are being changed, actually, you first have to dominate the to dominate the culture, to create the cultural hegemony. So the digital tools, digital infrastructure, digital media are actually devices for creating cultural hegemony of today. And we can all agree on that, because we all have those black boxes around ourselves, in our pockets. So that's the cultural hegemony. And Antonio Gramsci, the great Marxist, Italian Marxist theoretician, sees concept of cultural hegemony by highlighting its invisibility and pervasive nature in shaping societal norms, values, and beliefs. And as I mentioned, those processes, algorithmicity, black boxes, are not seen. For the ordinary people, it's something, for all of us, it's something invisible. But for the most of the people, it's not even comprehensible, besides being invisible. So the Dutch scholar that I already mentioned, Hert Loving, critiques the invisibility of internet platform hegemony by analyzing how centralized platforms dominate the online ecosystem, while obscuring the mechanisms of control. And he says, in its invisibility, internet has reached its hegemonic state. So, to remind ourselves why I'm talking about these things so much. Because as you know, I research a lot information and media literacy. And the objective of media studies is to make visible what's invisible. Or how to say, to make invisible visible. To somehow expose by the critique ideology of the digital. Because we are in need to demystify invisibility of computational operations by bringing them out from behind the veil of technical obfuscation. Because technological solutionism, tech solutions, do not optimize for values like democracy, equality, solidarity, and sustainability. And as much as we are missing questions like about structures, functions, habits, norms, and practices of the digital, we won't be able to see the materiality of the digital infrastructures, the techno-fetishism that I was talking about, the black box society, as Frank Pasquale puts it, or the cold totalitarianism, as Franco Biffo Berardi puts it. So what's being obscured? Now we understand surveillance, mass data collection, and algorithmic oppression, the commodification and gamification of every part of our lives, the heightened alienation and polarization, the hierarchy of cliques that elevates hate, objection, and lies, and excessive consumption of digital technologies became a key driver of present climate crisis, ecological breakdown, and ongoing social inequality. So we are stuck, as Hert Loving says, with the concept of eternal capitalism, which changes only in appearance but never in essence. And that's why I'm talking about the continuities. From the philosophical angle, digital technology creates the hegemony of thought. Digital technology are the archetypes of efficacy and the most refined expressions of positivism, rationalism, and instrumentalism, which is the knot of enlightening thought. Foundational principles of digital systems shape and constrain our ways of thinking by excluding the contingency, the ontological principle that embraces the accidental and unexpected. Users unconsciously adopt the narrow ideological dictates embedded in the digital. The digital alienates users from the unpredictable and contingent aspects of life that fuel innovation and individuality. So we ended up in something that Evgeny Morozov calls ideology that there is no alternative anymore. So he puts it this way: we are in danger of ending up with a kind of idiot history in which everything starts in Silicon Valley and there are no other forces or causes. Bernard Stiegler, another famous philosopher of technology, once called it called this the systemic stupidity of digital culture. So despite the extensive abuses of big tech corporations from the outset, the global north intellectual classes only began regularly publishing a narrow set of negative things about today tech giants maybe 10 years ago. And I was the lucky one, let's say, that I was immensely researching the critical pedagogy and critical librarianship even before, and somehow I realized how it's being connected to the information ethics and the processes that, let's say, 10 years ago, this presentation would be like, is he nuts? What's he talking about? But maybe now we are somehow ready to digest these layers of control and hegemony, invisible hegemony, that is forming our lives. Another interesting concept is the dead internet theory, the term which started to circulate widely maybe a few years ago. It refers to the observable increase in the content generated via large language models. So it means that after the digitalization of everything that we have been talking about, the system no longer needs human input anymore, since the content is mainly produced by bots and large language models, curated by algorithms to manipulate the population and minimize organic human activity. So the Hibert in his last book, The Extinction Internet, speaks about this and calls it, somehow proves it, that the internet is dead. The internet was once imagined as a tool of liberation. And this is how we can also, I know that Raul liked this slide. I think you approached me in Sarajevo saying that this was a good comparison. So in 1994, the web platform was a community run by tech enthusiasts, motivated by fun and curiosity to empower users and provide useful information in a democratic and egalitarian manner while promoting good and rewarding evil. Well, 20 years after, the web platform is a digital app run by a huge global corporation, motivated by profits and growth to spy on users and sell their personal data and maximize ads at the expense of the useful information in manipulative manner while making concessions to dictators and tyrants when necessary. So somehow to wrap up this part of presentation, the problem with the digital is that digital gives us what we think we want. And Nolan Gertz calls it technological nihilism. The real threat is not so much a robot uprising, but more subtly, the possibility of losing touch with important parts of ourselves and our world. And I have been already speaking about Orwellian, Huxleyan concept of two forms of control that I here somehow mention again, because those two novels from the 20th century, famous novels, dystopian novels, explains are the forms of social control. Yeah. And Neil Postman, that we also mentioned today, wrote that Huxley grasped what Orwell did not, that it's not necessary to conceal anything from a public, insensible to contradiction and narcotized by the technological diversions. So we have been warned. Now I come to my famous, to one of my favorite theoretician, Korean-born German philosopher Byung-Chul Han, who says that the subjugated subjects are not even aware of its own subjugation. So I quote from his book, "The smartphone is a tool of domination. It acts like a rosary. As a subjugation device, smartphone acts like a rosary and its beads. This is how we keep them constantly in hand. The like is a digital amen. We keep going to confessions. We undress by choice. But we don't ask for forgiveness. Instead, we call out for attention. And as much as we are calling out for attention, being present on the social media, we are feeling more lonely and more desperate. And that it's also a well-researched topic in psychology and sociology, etc. So I would be there to say that in algorithms we trust today. Majority of us, I can't say all of us, nothing could be absolute in that way, are trusting those devices that we place very close to ourselves, to our hands, to our hearts, to our minds. And this technological nihilism, technology not only satisfies nihilistic desires, but also generates them. So Nolan Gertz says, the greater the opacity is, the greater the mystery, the greater the fate. The medieval nihilism of trying to prove that God exists has been replaced with the modern day nihilism of trying to prove that I exist. If Big Brother, or now Big Data, is watching me or watching us, then there must still be me who exists, a me who is worth watching. And that's how we constantly put ourselves and stream ourselves online to satisfy our nihilistic desires. So the question then is not whether we can understand and regulate algorithms, but whether we can understand and regulate our own nihilism, which is, of course, escaping from different forms of escapism from not having to face the reality. So, as Hert Loving said, we are stuck on the platform. And that's the name of his book published in 2021, I think. He says, we are trapped on the platform, and the techno-utopianism of 90s comes now in returned form, in inverted form. So let's see, fake news, cancel culture, cyber warfare, doom scrolling, trolling, ritualized sadism, vicious misogyny, racism, alt-right cultures, lynch mobs, etc., etc., etc. It was all introduced by the cool tools, applications, being creative. Let's be creative. Let's be content creators. So the creative autonomy became nonsense production and dissemination. And I like this also question. Where is the embarrassment of the digital? I don't see any correlation with what Sigmund Freud said, that the lack of shame equals stupidity. But we are, as Christian Lukic said, we are colonized with love. And that's the basic problem, I would say. So this brave new social algorithm, and the social algorithm is the name of the PhD course that I do in Sarajevo at the Global Studies program, together with Vladan Joler, professor from Novi Sad, and Petar Jandrić, another professor from University of Zagreb, who is editor of the very high-ranked Springer journal, Post-Digital Science and Education. And I named the course Social Algorithm, trying to actually bring in the syllabus these topics for the PhD student and discuss it with them. So the 21st century authoritarianism can use the amusement-driven entertainment media to gain and hold power, then deploy the power to execute surveillance, censorship, exploitation, and persecution of enemies. So how can we understand the pervasive power of technology at this moment of history and its role in our lives? It's one of the, I think, very important questions. And another one would be, what are the material impacts of planetary scale technology on our planet? Because we used to forget that there is no such a thing as the cloud. Immateriality of information. Everything is rooted in materiality. Every design, all these infrastructures uses rare material, minerals. Rare minerals. And you see, as in Ukraine or in Bosnia or in Serbia now, about findings of those rare minerals which are being part of the trade about the green transition or the end of the world in Ukraine, for example. So how did we get here? I already somehow explained, and I don't want to be too redundant, speaking again about the Californian ideology and access to tools and control over means of computation, etc., because somehow I already covered that. So let's be fair, finally, that internet was always a political and ideological project. For its first years, 20 years, the internet was almost completely dependent on American federal funding, whether via the military or through the universities. Large amount of US tax dollars went into building the internet infrastructures and subsidizing its services. Technology remains the central to the latest incarnation of battling empires. The US view on artificial intelligence is that if we build bigger and bigger data centers and bigger large language models, AI will eventually think and become conscious. But instead, we witness ramping up immigration policies, embracing bizarre fake news ideas, attacking universities, withdrawing public spending for any science program. So to understand how AI is fundamentally political, we need to go beyond the neural networks and statistical pattern recognition to instead ask what is being optimized and for whom and who gets to decide. And then we can trace the implications of these choices. So AI as autonomous agent for sure is the first tool in the history that can create new things by itself and make decisions by itself. So it is why it's hard to be compared to any previous technological revolution. So talking about this infocalypse and epistemic chaos, I'm finally having these points to somehow name all that we have been talking today. Instead of pursuing truth, new technologies aim to replace it with mimicry and fantasy. High tech has empowered infodemic shaming, scamming, spamming at unprecedented levels. Users are not the real customers. The system is designed to benefit a tiny number of stakeholders, not users, and certainly not society or the culture. Real people became inputs. Remember the story about cybernetics for the beginning of today's lecture. In a profit maximization scheme, which requires that they are constantly controlled and manipulated. This is not a flaw in the system, but actually how it has been designed. In this environment, everything gets viewed as a resource or input. That's why I said we are a data. We are inputs. We are the resource. So that technocracy replacing truth with the power is the pursuit of truth has become a sad joke throughout society. A contempt for truth went mainstream, knowledge gets turned into authoritarian tool. In the past, governments controlled the huge technologies, nuclear power, spaceships, etc., so they were somewhat accountable to the citizens. But now, the most powerful new tech is in the private hands, and the public good is no longer even considered. So much wealth is concentrated in the hands of winners in these processes that they literally became more powerful than the nation states. We can all agree on this also. With this shift in power, even the most independent politicians turn into controlled agents working for technocracy, making a mockery of democracy. So if you oppose to this command and control tech, you can be theoretically and often literally erased, suspended, deplatformed, shadow banned, surveilled, debanked, digitally faked, etc. So talking now about the AI, after making this long introduction for today's afternoon session, we see that it's being promoted in the West, but all around the globe, as a panacea for the world's problems. Expect when it destroys the livelihoods of people in the creative industry through wholesale copyright infringement and intellectual property theft. For me, for example, I still can't put it in words. So what is human denied of? For example, to use somebody else's work, it would be the copyright infringement. When AI companies did it with the whole open knowledge on the web, it was not copyright infringement. So how the AI works? Through the data, through the open data on the internet, by the scrapping the knowledge we put out there. So AI firms like ChatGPT flourish by stealing online material owned by artists, actors, writers, musicians, and others, so they can reconstitute it for a wide-scale reuse without paying its creators. So, not being critical to this is actually how we are being conquered also. How users negotiate trust, identity, and sociality in AI-mediated information-seeking practices. Framing AI as caring, consistent, and neutral creates the challenges in recognizing its limitations and potential biases. This phenomenon raises important questions about the ways in which such a trust can interfere with critical thinking. Despite widespread belief in ChatGPT's neutrality, the AI is inherently subjective. Its responses are molded by users' input, language patterns, and prompt engineering. Shall we stop for a second?
If they find out about what we speak, they make trouble.
So here it is. I needed a break to be honest. So if you don't believe me, let's believe to godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winner in physics last year, for his pioneering work in neural networks, proposing in 1986 a method to predict the next word in a sequence, which has been used as a large language model. Now the foundational concept behind today's LLMs. Geoffrey Hinton criticized AI industry companies for prioritizing profits over safety. So I quote, "If you look at what big companies are doing right now, they are lobbying to get less AI regulation. There's hardly any regulation as it is, but they want even less. Artificial general intelligence could surpass human intelligence and potentially wipe out humanity if their goals became misaligned with the human interests. And that's the problem. And Hinton's main concerns revolve around the existential risks posed by superintelligent AI, the difficulty of controlling AI development in a competitive global environment, the societal harms for misinformation and job displacement, and urgent need for regulation and ethical oversight to mitigate these risks." So, for me, when I hear AI, I hear AI industry. I hear register of power. For me, AI, as I explained this morning in talking about media information literacy, is not a tool. It shouldn't be perceived only as a tool. It should be perceived as a register of power. AI systems are hyped as inevitably leading to significant progress for all humanity. What is ignored is that they are opaque, biased, costly, resource-intense, and controlled by a handful of Silicon Valley firms that need to profit. And downplaying and denial about AI environmental hosts heading for even worse energy crisis. And that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. How the consumption of energy is closely related to this industry. And I don't want to digress now, I'll leave it for tomorrow, but that's also something very important, I think, to know. So when we speak about the anatomies of black box society and AI infrastructure, I use and borrow the maps, the drawings of my already mentioned Professor Vladan Joller, who has at least for last 10 years, a couple of projects that are, for me, extraordinary way to combine art and in order to depict us, to not just provoke us, to show us, illustrate us, the processes in a black boxes. So most of his work is done on the black, resembling the black box, and inside he draws, he depicts, he illustrates the processes that I'm talking for hours today. Yeah. And he names it data extractivism. So, as we already concluded, the data, digital citizens, are simultaneously prosumers. I guess you are familiar with this word. It's prosumer, it's from presume and consume, produce and consume, yeah. But it's from 70s, from Alvin Toffler's book, The Shock, The Future Shock. We are prosumers, so we produce and consume. We are, at the same time, resource. We are feeding the neural networks. That's how they become smart, intelligent. Yeah. But we forget that we are also the unpaid workers. We are free workers in algorithmic factory. Social media operates as a factory, 24/7 factory. Circulates inputs and outputs by algorithmic feedbacks. And we are constantly glued, going back to see what's going on. So we work, because our attention is used and misused, and when our attention is broken, we can't focus. We can't refocus. That's why it's hard to have a continuity now in studying, learning, etc. So as I mentioned already, we get it for free, so it means that we are a product. We are the perfect product of these systems. So as an extractive industry, Kate Crawford puts it in her book, Anatomy of AI, published a few years ago. She explains the three main components that drive artificial intelligence are, so we need to have a data. So we are a resource. We are the source of data and metadata. It needs human labor, labor of prosumers, but also the invisible labor that I'm going to talk about it also, that we don't see, those who are actually are not paid for their work, or not paid miserably for cleaning, let's say, the garbage of the internet highway, and of course environmental resources. So when we put and see those three components that are without artificial intelligence is non-existent, we see that when we speak about the data, we speak about violent extraction of data, exploitation of human labor, and extraction of environmental resources, which causes further ecological destruction. So I quote from her book, Anatomy of AI, artificial intelligence is both embedded and material, made from natural resources, fuel, human labor, infrastructures, logistics, histories, and classifications. AI systems are not autonomous, rational, or able to discern anything without extensive, computationally intensive training with large data sets or predefined rules and rewards. In fact, artificial intelligence, as we know, it depends entirely on a much wider set of political and social structures that we've been speaking about today also, and due to the capital required to build AI at scale and the ways of seeing that it optimizes AI systems are ultimately designed to serve existing dominant interests. And this is how those maps of Vladan and Kate looks like. So,
this is professor's map?
Yeah. So those maps explore deep materiality of AI, data capture and monetization of human practices, and communication and sociality of AI. So in their visual essay, Anatomy of AI Systems, Crawford and Yoller dissected the whole supply chain behind the smart devices, mapping the complexity in 21st century supply chains. Diagram combines or visualizes three central extractive processes that are required to run large-scale artificial intelligence systems, as we already mentioned: material, resources, human labor, and data. So that's why he named it data extractivism, or new extractivism. In that essay, they mention Jussi Parikka, anthropologist, media anthropologist, who in his book, The Geology of Media, says media are not extensions of humans, but extensions of planet Earth. Why? Because our devices are loaded with the Earth rare minerals, materials. So every time AI is put to use, it initiates a chain of events that have far-reaching consequences. But well before it even begins to be usable, it requires vast amount of resources. Put it simply, each small moment of convenience, be it answering a question, turning on a light, Alexa, turn on the light, for example, or playing a song, requires a vast planetary network fueled by the extraction of non-renewable materials, labor, and data. The scale of resources required is many magnitudes greater than the energy and labor it would take a human to operate a household appliance or flick a switch. And so we come to the topic of eco-media literacy, which would be in the integration of media literacy with the environmental literacy. And Antonio Lopez introduced this concept of eco-media literacy as an emerging area of media literacy that teaches the integrated relationship between the media and living systems. So, if I would refer back to Marshall McLuhan and his famous thoughts about the media as extension of our bodies, of our senses, that he postulated in the 70s, I would extend his definition to this, that digital media are extension of techno-capitalism that I've been talking about today. And now we come to the Vladan Yoller's animation. So I have here explained that video, but if you don't mind, I would really like to play it for you. It would be much more authentic to see Vladan's work. And if you agree, I would find it on the internet, and I hope we all can enjoy it together. Enjoy it. So shall we put it in for... To turn on what?
Să vedem, poate este pe aici băgată.
Oh, so it's turned off here.
Yes, and we want to have BDMI, este ăsta e, nu? Ok, e bine. Da, da, da.
Concepts and allegories. The word assemblage is usually understood or gathering of things or people, a machine or object made of pieces fitted together, or a work of new extractivism. An assemblage of concepts and allegories. The word assemblage is usually understood as a collection or gathering of things or people, a machine or object made of pieces fitted together, or a work of art made by grouping together found or unrelated objects. This map and accompanying footnotes are precisely that. One big messy assemblage of different concepts and ideas, assembled into one semi-coherent picture, or let us say a map, a worldview. 1. Gravity. Like Einstein's theory of relativity, massive objects curve the space and time of the topography of the Internet, proportionally to their weight, defined by the number of their users and content. So we can think of massive monopolies and conglomerates such as Google and Facebook as enormous black holes that, with their gravity, create a field so intense that it attracts and swallows the content and users. 2. Forces. Many other potential vectors and social forces contribute to that gravitational force. The fear of social isolation, economic and professional insecurity, unrealistic expectations of efficiency and productivity in the adapt or die environment, tailored addictions, depression and anxieties. These are just some of the other vectors that constitute social forces that keep us, with or without our wish, attached to those platforms. The social cost of opting out has become so high that opting out is essentially a fantasy. 3. Black holes. Our imaginary hero is swimming against one of those platforms' gravitational force. As they glide towards the singularity defined by the mass of these giants, users and content pass beyond the event horizon, the imaginary boundary in time and space, beyond which there is no return to the outer part of this universe. The event horizon defines the line after which the social and economic price of leaving those platforms is becoming too high. No matter how fast they try to swim now, the stream will pull them towards the center of the black hole. Without even noticing, this story's actor is now falling towards the hole into a new allegory, the cave. 4. Allegory of the cave. What takes place at the bottom of this metaphorical black hole can be described through Plato's allegory of the cave. Plato describes a group of people who spend their entire life chained to cave walls looking at a blank wall. These people are watching the shadows of real objects projected on this wall, giving them names and meanings. In our story, the script and directing of this performance of shadows are entrusted to human algorithmic machines that regulate, filter, censor and moderate the projected content on the walls of the cave. The existing elements and content that exist outside this cave and horizon of events create an information flow, a theater of shadows. 5. Walls. The cave and tower walls are constructed of multiple opaque layers and built mostly by ghost work or invisible labor. The bricks of this structure are made of black boxes, closed code and hardware, glued together with the invisible network infrastructure. They are covered with layers of corporate secrets, patents and copyrights. 6. The interface. Interfaces are framing and structuring the projected algorithmic spectacle of images. Even though they are a direct manifestation of rules, regulations and taxonomies, they successfully obscure what is hidden beneath them. They define directly or indirectly what we can or cannot do. They are both tools and discursive frames. They are instituted as an order of discourse and embodiment of the discipline power of the platform. This cave is not only a prison cell, but it carries out the function of a factory hall and a resource extraction apparatus. The prisoner performs their threefold function as a worker, a resource and a product. 7. Shadows and capture agents. The spectacle of a constant flow of information projected through the interface creates a digital shadow on the opposite wall of the cave. The projected digital shadow on the wall is a resource field where thousands of capture agents, tentacles of the rhizomatic surveillance complex, extract information. Every movement or emotional reaction is being recorded continuously. These capture agents can take many forms and sizes. From the tiny pieces of code, crawlers that wander the web, over the sensors catching heartbeats and surveillance cameras capturing our faces, to the complex network of satellites orbiting Earth. They can see our shadows through a full range of the electromagnetic spectrum. They can be invisible or massive like a 500 meters wide radio telescope. The process of quantification is reaching into the human affective, cognitive and physical worlds. Every segment of our existence reflected on our digital shadows can be seen as a form of direct or indirect labor producing data as a behavioral surplus. When we breathe, walk, or sleep, every single emotion that we feel, our attention, our body temperature, or diseases that we have, everything can produce a behavioral surplus if being captured by surveillance apparatus. In that sense, even our bare existence within the walls of the cave can be seen as labor. Prisoner workers need to spend more and more hours maintaining their profiles in a similar fashion to sex workers in the windows of red light districts. Digital identity labor is the forced labor of the 21st century. This creates an auto-disciplinary society where each anomaly and misbehavior is detected and quantified. 8. Platopticon. The gravity of these techno-giants hold billions of users, workers, products at the bottom of those caves. In this assemblage of allegories, millions of caves or prison cells form the unique and invisible panopticon structure. The central tower of this structure has two main functions: 1, to project the content on the walls of the caves, and 2, to surveil and capture the digital shadows of the prisoners reflected on the opposite wall. 9. Information retrieval. From each cell cave and through the core of the panopticon tower, streams of information are flowing into one of the central structures of this image, the data bank. The data bank is not just the engine room, but the power itself. From here, we are examining three processes crucial for this story. On one side, extracted, stored and analyzed personal data is shaping the multidimensional portrait of the individual. On the second, all the products of the user's labor are being stored, analyzed and ranked, to form the information spectacle of images, meanings, and reputations. Furthermore, in the third one, this structure lies upon the top of the exploitation of human minds, bodies and nature. 10. Creation of data body. Our online behavior is captured, processed, and deconstructed into statistical vectors, clusters, patterns and anomalies. Each move we make is carefully analyzed by thousands of mathematical functions, algorithms and machine learning systems. This system does not see us through linear narratives emerging from our browsing behavior, metadata, or movements in physical space, but as n-dimensional statistical projections. Each and every one of our clicks sharpens the resolution and complexity of this abstract and constantly changing statistical portrait or data body. 11. Individuals. These multidimensional data portraits of the individual, consisting of millions of data points in hundreds of dimensions, can be seen as what Deleuze will name individual. A physically embodied human subject that is endlessly divisible and reducible to data representations via the modern technologies of control. The critical art ensemble is describing this data body as the fascist sibling of the virtual body, a much more highly developed virtual form, and one that exists in complete service to the corporate and police state. 12. Condividuals. Individual is always open to interaction, always ready to be detached from, and attached to, other individuals that share some properties with it, creating collective agents as condividuals, or supersubjects. The mountains and valleys of multidimensional ever-changing invisible algorithmic landscapes are clustering individuals and creating new relations, taxonomies, and ontologies. 13. Surveillant assemblage. The full picture of our individual being is not centralized in one place but is spread across hundreds of data centers in the rhizomatic assemblage of the surveillance economy and government actors. This non-heterogeneous and dispersed assemblage portrait exists through the system of data dealers, the official and unofficial exchange of data, in constant flow forming one functional entity. 14. Content extraction. Each web page or other piece of content that is being captured in the wild is rendered and analyzed. This content is being extracted into hundreds of different signals. Collected content and extracted data become a permanent corporate resource for creating multidimensional, dynamic, complex topologies in which every piece of data becomes an object that is contextually linked to other objects. Within this map, this new meta-territory, crawl hundreds of different mathematical functions, algorithms, and neural networks that we can call instruments of measurement and perception. 15. Instruments of measurement and perception. Those instruments of measurement and perception always come with inbuilt aberrations. The shape of the algorithmic lenses is carefully crafted to project the image that is in accordance with the platform's financial interest and political goals and values. Platforms often imply direct rules and regulations. They have direct power of regulation of what can be seen or said, what kind of content can and cannot exist in their universe. Here we are visually representing those rules and regulations as filters. Similarly to the algorithmic lenses, the fabric of those filters is crafted according to the platform's financial interests and political goals and values. 16. Projection of the world. Instruments of measurement and perception are ranking and defining hierarchies and relations between content, users and meaning. They define the digital regime of truth and order. This regime is a prism through which the world is projected in the form of the constant stream of spectacles on the walls of the caves. 17. Engines of extraction. Empowered by the digital extractivism tools of the information age, everything becomes a potential frontier for expansion and extraction. From the depth of DNA code in every single cell of the human organism, to vast frontiers of human emotions, behavior and social relations, to nature as a whole, everything becomes the territory for the new extractivism. At this moment in the 21st century, we see a new form of extractivism that is well underway, one that reaches into the furthest corners of the biosphere and the deepest layers of human cognitive and affective being. 18. Enclosure and affinity to infinity. In the transition to the information age, capitalism was given a chance to satisfy its affinity for infinity, to form and conquer an infinite number of new territories, to create new mechanisms for the accumulation of capital within these new spaces and to formulate new forms of exploitation. Once the territory is invaded, the process of enclosure and exploitation is established. New forms of extractivism are expanding into the territories far behind the biodiversity and knowledge enclosure. This is why we are not speaking anymore just about the knowledge economy but about the attention economy, emotion economy, and many other new economies being born from the invasion of new territories of extraction. 19. Fractal supply chains. Supply chains hidden behind the engines of extractivism are black boxes as much as neural networks or algorithms hidden behind interfaces. Each triangle of this fractal represents one phase in the production process, from birth in a geological process, through life as a consumer product, and ultimately to death in an electronics dump. Within the fractal supply chain, we see a perpetual dance between human labor, non-human labor, earth labor and automatization. 20. Blood, sweat, and toxic lakes. Every click or swipe we make online creates one little hole in the ground, filled with toxic waste and covered by toxic clouds. Every movement of materials and data within the planetary scale factory has its own hidden price. Supply chains are optimized towards maximizing profit for a few, while the real costs of the destruction that follows are shared among all the living entities on the planet in the present and the future. One molecule after another is extracted by labor and technique to make things for humans, but the waste products don't return so that the cycle can renew itself. 21. Triangular trade. Slavery was at the heart of the development of the modern planetary scale global economy. From those days, the same model of constant flow within the vast fractal production chains expanded in time, space and complexity. The transatlantic slave trade evolved into the contemporary planetary scale factory. 22. Chains of digital colonialism. Traditional colonial practices of control over critical assets, trade routes, natural resources and exploitation of human labor are still deeply embedded in the contemporary supply chains, logistics and assembly lines of digital content, products and infrastructure. In that sense, chains of digital colonialism are made both on the extraction of digital surplus and the traditional exploitation of labor and resources. The concepts presented are mostly represented here visually, in the form of allegories. Dictionaries define allegory as a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. All of these allegories and concepts together, joined in the form of an assemblage, create together a blueprint of a machine-like superstructure, or a super-allegory. In that sense, what we have here is an almost fractal allegorical structure, an allegory, within an allegory, within an allegory.
Okay, so I think my time is actually out, but we have I planned to continue with this materiality of the digital tomorrow and eco-media literacy. So somehow maybe if we have a chance to discuss a bit things, or
in my opinion, the things you prepared are more interesting than those I prepared, and would be I don't know, if we miss you, then we missed anything. So, in my opinion, we can hear you another 1.5 hours with a short break if you want.
I need a break, definitely.
You need break. So we can have a break and then we come back for another presentation of Mario, if you want.
But I'll probably finish this one.
Okay, and then I can renounce to deliver my presentation, or to, I don't know, if not something.
But we have tomorrow also.
Yes, yes, we have tomorrow, yeah. Yeah, we can have tomorrow. So,
Because I think also it's not that I need a break, but I think it's so many things to digest now.
yeah.
So many information.
So we will take a break and then of 15 minutes, and then we will continue with Mario on the about